Tervetuloa katsomaan ydinspektroskopiaryhmän videota Eksoottisia isotoppeja fuusiolla. Meillä on tänään tarkoituksena esitellä meidän tutkimusta ja laitteistoa, mitä me siinä käytetään. Mun nimi on Minna ja mä toimin jatko-opiskelijana ydinspektroskopiaryhmässä. Koko videon ajan voi lähettää kysymyksiä, niin me vastaillaan niihin sitten videon loppupuolella.
Moi. Welcome everybody to our Researchers Night event from the Nuclear Spectroscopy Group. I'm Andy, a researcher here in the Department of Physics. Today we're going to be telling you about some of the research that we do and also some of the devices that we use to carry out this research. We're part of a team of researchers that are tasked with understanding how some of the fundamental properties of nature can be probed by performing nuclear spectroscopy upon exotic nuclei. As Mina mentioned, there should be time for questions at the end, so please feel free to submit those in the chat, and hopefully we can have some things to discuss when we're finished talking. So, what are exotic nuclei? As I'm sure many of you know, nuclei are composed of positively charged protons and neutral neutrons. And a small number of these combinations result in the stable nuclei, which do not decay by the spontaneous emission of radiation. These can be seen from the black squares on the chart that should currently also be shown on your screen at this moment. The coloured squares show the nuclei that are known to be unstable and do decay by the spontaneous emission of radiation. There is a useful analogy that exists between this chart of nuclides and something like a valley, which can be shown in the cartoon to the right. The stable nuclei can be thought to exist at the bottom or floor of a valley, whereas the unstable nuclei exist higher up with additional numbers of protons or neutrons, which after their creation decay by the emission of radiation. And we're interested in studying combinations of these protons and neutrons that lie far from the stable nuclei and are therefore referred to as exotic. These nuclei are not found in nature because their half-lives are often short with respect to the age of our planet, and in order to study these we must therefore synthesize them ourselves in the laboratory. By measuring the radiation emitted by these exotic nuclei, we can learn something about the structures, properties and interactions of the protons and neutrons that make up them. Producing these nuclei requires quite a lot of specialized hardware. We take a beam of accelerated ions and collide these upon stable target material, which fuse to create a compound nucleus that lies far away from this so-called valley of stability. These reactions require a lot of specialized devices, which have been developed over the many years of operation here in Jyväskylä. Here we are in the cave that houses many of these devices, and now Mina is going to tell you a little bit more about these.
Kiitos. Eli tosiaan niin kuin Andy sanoi, me käytetään hiukkassuihkuja meidän tutkimuksessa. Eli tuolla takana näkyvän betoniseinän takaa meille saapuu tänne meidän luolaa, eli labraan suihkulinjaa pitkin hiukkassuihku. Eli näkyy tämä näkyvä putki tässä. Suihkulinjaa pitkin me ohjataan hiukkassuihku täällä näkyvään kammioon, eli tuolla takana tuommoinen harmaa kammio, kohtiokammio. Kohtiokammiossa hiukkassuihku törmäytetään kohtiokalvoon ja toivotaan, että saadaan aikaan fuusioreaktio. fuusioreaktiossa syntyneet eksoottiset isotoppit päätyy monesti varaustiloille, jotka purkautuu hyvinkin nopeasti lähettäen gammasäteilyä. Sitten gammasäteilyn mittaamista varten meillä kohtiokammio ympäröi germanium-ilmasimista tehty pallo. Eli nyt me näytetään esimerkki, tosiaan niin kuin Andy sanoi, niin aina välillä mittauksissa kohtiokalvoja menee hajalle. Eli ekana meillä on nikkelikalvo, joka on vielä ehjä, mutta sitä on käytetty mittauksessa. Eli siinä näkyy tuommoinen palojälki hiukkassuihkusta. Sitten toisena on näytillä, tai mitä siitä on jäljellä, sanotaan näin, niin tämmöinen hiilikalvo. Eli se on tosiaan jossain kohtaa repäjäytynyt. Kohtiokalvot on tosi ohkaisia, kymmeniä, satoja mikrometrejä paksuja. Ja tosiaan kun me käytetään noita germanium-ilmasimia meidän mittauksissa, niin ne germanium-ilmaisimet pitää toimijakseen niin pidetään kylmissä lämpötiloissa. Eli nyt meillä olisi aika täyttää yksi germanium-ilmasin nestetypällä. Eli nestetyppi on tosissaan tosi kylmää, miinus 196 astetta. Eli sen kanssa työskennellessä meidän pitää maskia ja hanskoja. Yleensä meillä germanium-ilmaisimet niin näkyy, että niissä on paljon tuommoisia letkuja kiinni, niin ne on tuommoisessa autotäytössä. Eli tietokoneella saadaan täytettyä niitä 3 päivässä. Mutta aina välillä joudutaan sitten käsiin hoitaa se homma. Nähdään, että nestetyppi kiehuu siellä ja pikkuhiljaa menee ilmaisimään. Sitten tosiaan siellä kohtiokammiossa, kun me on törmäytetty se suihku siihen kohtiokalvoon, toivottavasti saatu aikaa, fuusioreaktio, tuotettua niitä eksoottisia isotooppeja, niin sitten ne eksoottiset isotoopit, jotka on syntynyt, niin ne jatkaa matkaa tuota linjaa pitkin yhä edelleen kohti fokaalitasoa, missä ne voidaan sitten tunnistaa ja tutkia niiden ominaisuuksia paremmin. Eli lähdetään seuraavaksi katsomaan, miltä siellä fokaalitasolla näyttää ja minkälaista laitteistoa meillä siellä on.
The detection of radiation at the point of creation is known as in-beam spectroscopy. And in order to be able to measure the radiation that occurs sometime after the fusion products are created, we need devices that select and transport our species of interest away from all of the other species present. And these are known as recoil separators. We've just come past one of the separators, the Mara separator, that we've used in our recent experimental campaign. These focus the fusion products to a common area downstream, known as the focal plane, and now we'll continue on towards there. Due to the large amount of energy that is required for fusion to occur, the fusion products often exit the target, traveling at a few percent of the speed of light, which is very fast. And they are transported to this area, which we can pan to here. They come through this tube and are implanted inside a highly segmented silicon strip detector here. And Minna has currently one which we've used in our previous experiments. If you look very closely, you might be able to see some of the wires that make up the individual segments of the detector, or even some of the residue that has been implanted upon these during previous measurements. After coming to rest within the silicon, the fusion products, the silicon detector is used to measure the kinetic energy of the charged particles irradiated by the fusion products, which gives us a further insight into the structures of the protons and neutrons inside of the nuclei. During operation, these detectors are surrounded by a smaller array of germanium detectors, which we have here, which are pushed extremely close to the silicon, and we have to take care so that as little material as possible is in between the silicon detector and the germanium detector in operation. And these are used to measure gamma rays that may either be delayed or will accompany the charged particle events that we measure in our silicon detector. All of the signals that are generated within the detectors that we use are time-stamped by a common clock with a precision of 10 nanoseconds. This means that we know the exact time to a precision of 10 nanoseconds when all of these events occur, and we can do correlations between different detectors and also measure the half-lives of the decays that are occurring. Measurements that we do often run for between 1 and 2 weeks, but then the analysis of the data which is taken can sometimes progress for months or even years after such an experiment has occurred.
Sitten lopuksi, miksi olla tutkija? Pääsee töitä tekemään monikansallisessa ympäristössä ja pääsee sitä kautta tutustumaan hyvin erilaisiin ihmisiin. Pääsee tekemään töitä laboratoriossa, mitä ei löydy ihan joka paikasta. Ja mikä parasta, työ on ihan äärimmäisen mielenkiintoista. Kiitoksia. Sitten me siirrytään kysymysosioon.
What does the blue thing between the gamma ball and the focal plane?
This is one of the... Oh, sorry. The question is, what was the blue thing between the gamma ball and the recoil separator? And this is one of the three main components of the separator. It is essentially an array of lenses that focus the products that, when they come out of the target, they may be diverging due to scattering interactions within the target, but these focus the products onto a path which is more readily accepted by the separator to transport them, so they come to a common area here at the focal plane and can be implanted within the silicon detector. I think we'll take another question, so if you haven't had a chance to submit any questions in the chat, please be encouraged to do so.
You can use English and Finnish for questions.
How do you separate the different isotopes in the focal plane or the products? For example, if there is high energy particle coming through the detector. separate the reactor.
You can explain in
Repeat the question.
Repeat.
What was the question?
Basically, then
How to separate different particles here.
The question was how to separate high energy events that come at the focal plane, which may not necessarily be real events and that are produced by some other mechanism. And we do that by having other silicon detectors outside of the DSSD, which stop these events and measure things which are exiting the DSSD. And by correlating events seen in these detectors, we veto them from the real events that are occurring at the DSSD. I hope that answers your question.
there was another question. What is that cabinet?
No, behind me. Eli täällä meillä on elektroniikkaa, jota on aika paljon, mitä me käytetään mittauksissa. Eli siellä meillä on paljon vahvistimia, signaaleja, prosessoja monella tapaa. Ja sitten tosiaan, kun mitataan, niin halutaan tallentaa se, mitä on mitattu. Eli tässä on meillä monennäköistä erilaista moduulia siihen eri ilmaisimille ja erilaisille signaaleille, analogisille, digitaalisille. One question. How you can improve some applications with your research? Is it possible?
Yes. One of the applications of our research is that we're not completely sure which combinations of protons and neutrons are possible and can be synthesized in a lab. And each year, progress is made to try and extend these boundaries further and further. And during the past couple of years that this current setup has been operational, we've improved that boundary by discovering 6 new isotopes, which increase our knowledge of how nuclei exist at the extremes. Thank you.
What about highlight from your career?
A highlight from my career was probably during the experiments that we ran for my PhD thesis, the first few events that came through and the first time that we discovered one of these new isotopes, seeing them myself and being the first person to ever see those was a particular highlight for myself. How about you?
Aika lailla samanlainen vastaus, eli jatko-opintoihin liittyen tehdyt mittaukset ja sitten niistä saatu data ja sitten kun sieltä saa ensimmäisiä tuloksia. Sorry, you don't understand Finnish.
That's okay.
Okay. One question was, what was the price of germanium detector? Yeah.
So the germanium detectors that we have are very expensive. They are some tens of thousands of euros each, and in total, this price can range up towards hundreds of thousands, even towards a million euros for a full array. And these last for many of the experimental campaigns, whereas some of the other detectors don't last for this amount of time. For example, this silicon detector that Minna was showing you earlier, after 3 or 4 long experiments with a lot of radiation implanted into it, the properties of this detector are degraded, and these must be replaced. And these are also expensive. These are some 10,000 euros each and must be replaced. Maybe we can take a closer look. So if there are any more questions, please submit them in the chat. If not, I hope you enjoyed this talk and learned something interesting about nuclear physics and more what it's like to be a researcher here in Jyväskylä.
Eli siellä oli vielä yksi kysymys, että onko tutkimustuloksesta vaikea löytää se, mitä halutaan? No, ensinnäkin aina ei löydetä sitä, mitä halutaan, mutta useimmiten toivottavasti löydetään. Ja se ei ole mitään kauhean helppoa. Toisinaan ottaa paljon aikaa. Se riippuu hyvin paljon mittauksesta. Voi olla toisinaan voidaan löytää jo mittausten aikana. Toivottavasti vastasi kysymykseen. Kiitoksia kysymyksistä. Vielä voi esittää, jos jollain. 3 minuuttia olisi vielä aikaa vastailla kysymyksiin, jos on jotain liittyen